Tom Demajo'yu sahneye davet ediyorum. I would like to invite Mr. Tom Demajo, Director of Biome Collective. Şimdi sözü Sayın Profesör Karl Stoker'a bırakıyor. Hepinize keyifli bir oturum diliyorum.
Welcome. My warmest greetings to everybody. And maybe the first I have to tell you is designers, they never do what people expect that you should do. So they told me, sit here, but I prefer standing here because it's easier to introduce my colleagues. Afterwards, I will sit down. Yeah? I first would like to say maybe some words about me, about my person, that you know who I am. I'm also like four personalities. Yeah? I'm four persons. One person is I'm studied history. Yeah? I studied history, and it's nice to be a historian because you know a lot about the life, about the past, but it's really important to have it for the future too. My second person is I'm an exhibition designer. I design exhibitions, yeah? I tell stories and present it in 3D environments to the public. Third identity, I'm a university teacher, and I love to work with young people because they are the future. Yeah? They keep you young. I like it. And at least I'm a manager. I have to manage my Institute of Design and Communication with 37 people working with me. And this is sometimes a little bit hard because I have to work with a lot of administrative stuff, but I have to do it. This is my job. And all in all, these four persons together, it's me, it's Karl Stocker. Yeah. So that's me. Now let's move to the more important persons on stage. I first like to introduce Yalım. She's industrial and interior designer. She's located in Ankara, but she's doing a lot of international projects. In 1996, she founded Artful Interior and Product Design. And 2005, together with her husband, the August Yalım, yeah, super, Yalım Design Studio, yeah. They made a lot of professional projects, famous projects. They are very international, and they won many, many awards. Yeah? And also, and this is cool that you're doing that, she is teaching young people at the university. This is really important, that professionals are in the university and teaching young children, young students, sorry. Then I like to introduce Celaleddin Çelik. Oh, okay, super. He is located in Istanbul. He is an architect, but also musician, as I know. And he runs the UNStudio, Architecture and Design, since 2013. And he also is teaching at the university, the CEO University in Istanbul, the Architectural Design Studio with students. What also is very interesting, he's a star in a TV show, yeah? He has a TV show called From the Tradition to the Future for the Turkish National TV. And I think this is really important because with TV, you can reach people, yeah? Not with too complicated written books. So I think this job is really important. He's member of the board for the Turkey Design Council. He won a lot of rewards and prizes for architectural competitions. Yeah, and musician, that's really important, yeah? So the next is Tom Demajo. He's originally from London, now working in UNESCO City of Design Dundee. and he's a game designer, artist, and his focus is on multi-sensory interactive experiences. So it's the augmented reality. It's something we cannot feel if you don't use technology, I would say. Yeah, and he is the founding partner of the Biomi Collective, which works in this field. And he tries to explore relationships and effects between technology and society, using unconventional spaces to create dynamic, immersive experiences. Very interesting. And last but not least, Kristoph Nowak. Originally, he came from Poland, lived in Germany for a long time, and is now working in Amsterdam, is senior architect and associate at the UNStudio. The United Network Studios, 1988, founded by Ben van Berkel and Karl. It's a really famous architectural company. I think they do a lot of really incredible projects, yeah, dealing with the topic of our session today. And he personally has involved in a lot of large-scale international projects in Netherlands, Germany, and Georgia. Yeah, and he's also playing a key role in these projects. And as you know, these projects, they are normally complicated. Yeah, so yeah, you have to deal with people. And I think you must be successful if you're still in this job. What we're going to do, I now give my discussion partners, each of them 10, 15 minutes, better I would say 10, yeah, to give their input on the topic. Yeah? How can design help, yeah, to improve the life of people? Yeah? And I asked them when we did the preparation of this session, I asked them to explain it from her personal work experience, because this is really important, and I'm really happy that those 4 people are from such different fields, and this will be the first part of our panel now. In the second part, I want to ask each of them a question, and afterwards you will have the possibility to have a discussion with these guys too. Yeah, and let's start with. I think we start with Ece. Yeah, please, would you take over?
Yeah. Should I come over there?
As you like. What's better for you? I think we are free to organize this like for us it's best.
About to sing now. Okay, thanks a lot for the introduction, and thanks a lot again for the organization that they actually wanted us to share our ideas on a topic like this. Can you all hear? Am I fine? Okay, good. I think the topic is pretty interesting, although it seems so simple, like how do we do better design, and what does better design do with better life? I think it's really, really important, because now we're living in such a condition, such a world, that we have problem of resources, right? Constraints about resources, growing population, fast life, changing life. We have to work a lot. You know, if you look at the life that we're going through, it's pretty problematic. You know, we have health problems. Do I sound negative now? Okay. As a team, as a design team, we actually try to create visionary products. We're specialized on working areas, the office areas mainly, but the whole idea is to create some visionary products for people, and we want to enhance their work experience while they're using the products. And we do it by designing some products that are really satisfactory in both physical and emotional sense, because we do care about people's needs, which I think is the key word. Probably I'm going to be using this word a lot. the need is actually where you start, designing, in our case. Every time we start a new project, we ask this question to ourselves: why am I designing now? Why am I doing it? I mean, there's so many products out there. I don't want to underestimate any of them, but some of them are surplus, right? So many chairs, so many tables. So if I'm designing for an office, then I ask myself, like, am I going to design another table? I really need to have a good reason. First, I have to convince myself, then convince the producer, because they're going to invest a lot of money. Then, finally, convince the user, because they are sometimes not aware that they need it. So these are the products we're after. We're really looking for the need. What's the real need of a user, let's say if it's in a working area? And as a team, what we do, it's not a skin-deep research, but really deep research about how can we make their life better, their experience better, not only in an efficiency manner, but also in case of their health, better health conditions, not only physical health, but mental health. Because, you know, sorry, I'm always giving example of work area because that's our specialized area. But, you know, we spend our hours, like, so many time in the work area, maybe we don't even see our kids as much as we see our colleagues. And that area is not only has to be efficient and comfortable, but also we have to touch those people's hearts so that they're going to be happy and well, motivated about what they're doing. So this is actually the main thing for us. Better design should be a better understanding of human needs to begin with. Cool. And how you do it, you have to come up with a great idea. You really have to find a problematic area and maybe create a solution for that area. And I believe maybe in the past it was what designers did was a one-man show. But I definitely do believe that from now on, and I also tell this to my students, it's a teamwork. If you don't have a client, a producer who trusts you, who actually believes in you and your ideas, well, what you design is nothing. And also, there's so many new things happening around you, like about technology, innovations, and new materials. But plus, I think another thing very, very important for me is the human behavior. It's changing, you know, the milieu. It's changing quickly. We have mega trends. We can't just sit in our own local area and just concentrate on what I can do for my people. I think we should just concentrate in a more global sense. And here, the needs are there. All you have to do is analyze the human behavior. How they're changing. You have to analyze, you have to be a good pattern reader, empathizer, and as we talked before, storytellers. So the designers are standing between the innovation, all these new technologies, and the producer. The producers, most of them, the brands, they have a same distance to the new technologies. But that means if they start designing, maybe the products are going to look alike. But as a designer, if you manage to come up with a good idea to use the new technology for a good reason, for a good need, then, you know, you come up with a unique and a better design for better life. So I think interdisciplinary work is another keyword here. It can be both with people who are engineers, good in technology, maybe sociologists, maybe history people, because you really, really have to gather, you have to understand what human really needs and what's the near future, how it's changing. And a keyword here is the new generation. You know, basically the products we do for some leading companies in Turkey, the office companies, we do for new generation. And they are different. I can see it in with my students. They don't sit and work. They go around, you know. They don't like tables. They don't like rules. So you should start thinking like them just to make them use your product in the most efficient way. So I think for a better design, all the designers, even the other professions, I tell the same thing to my son who's studying genetics. I tell him you have to work in team, interdisciplinary work. You have to be able to understand the other people, be open. And I think the better designs are going to come out in the near future from good teams, not one-man show. Not that, I just want to design something and it's going to be beautiful. No, we don't have the luxury just to play with form, colors, and aesthetic, even the function. We really, really have to come up with good reason to design another product like we have hundreds of them, maybe thousands of them out there. So I think that was my second keyword, the interdisciplinary teamwork. Mm-hmm. And of course, here, sustainability, I think, should be a must in a better design. The way we look at it as a team, again, it's not only with the materials, but also the tendency. We try to design the products that can evolve with these new human behaviors. So if I'm designing for today, I want to be sure that the investor is not going to invest more the next 5 years, but that product should evolve with the changing habits, because I know where the new generation is going, because I did my research. I think that's the part that we should all be doing. And mostly, we follow our products for a long time. It's good that we have long-time relationships with the firms so that we can really follow what's going on with the products. Sometimes we revise them. We change it through the new demands, but the base is there, the idea is there. So they become a little bit of timeless. Maybe it's too, maybe the user should say if it's timeless or not. It's not up to me to say it, but we try to make it that way. Again, the reason is we're not in the situation of wasting money, wasting material, and wasting people's energy to create again and again and again just because they're beautiful. We should be very careful on that. Maybe it was like that before, but so I guess these are my keywords, thinking about what better design should have. Form, function relationship, the balance between materials and detailing, it's the base. It's past. We need a good reason to do that.
Okay,
yeah?
Thank you very much for this interesting talk. I think, Celaleddin, would you go on, please?
Working? Is this working now? I think so.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Actually, we have guests here, and I'm talking before the guests. It's not the Turkish way, really, to do it, but thank you for...
It's my
I
fault.
apologize for that. But, of course, I obey the moderator. That's about everything here. So welcome all. But, by the way, I must admit
I tried alphabetical order, and I wanted Ece first. So this was the reason how to do it. Yeah.
But by the way, I must admit that it's nice for me to talk now because what Ece told was actually an inspiration for me. So I can follow up from where she left us. I would like to tell a story that is conveyed from the great architect Mies van der Rohe's office. He had a great office and he had a workshop in the office, like a laboratory, and young architects were testing a window there, a wooden window. They were testing it against wind and against rain and everything. So someone asks those architects, young architects, why are you testing these? Because this window detail is exactly the same detail that you used like 10 years ago on this project. They said, you are right, we asked the same thing to Mies, and he responded, that's correct, test this, and if you find anything missing here, if you find any faults, and then you can design a new window now and test the new thing. First, you must find something that is missing, that is problematic, or that is a fault. Then you have the right to change it, he said. And this was very, very inspiring for me, because it's actually very ironic for this iconic figure of modern architecture, because we believe in innovation and we believe in technology and everything new. But he stands against this, and like Ece pointed out, we have to have a reason to change something, to create something that also empowers our performance of creativity. Then it will have a reason, it will have a cause to solve something. And she also mentioned beauty, and that's also one of my notes today. We are in an era that is really focused on visual impact mostly, and visual impact that is expected to shock us, that we have to catch it up against among a lot of other images, and it doesn't last for long also. So this is another problem we have now, because firstly, beauty is not only related to images, to visual images. It's like actually downgrading what beauty is, and it's also downgrading what human being is, because we have other senses as well, and we don't even treat our sense of seeing, we don't appreciate it enough, because it's too fast now. So there are a lot of hundreds of thousands of images all day, everywhere. So we have to, we don't focus on them enough. So an image, a design, a building has to show up itself to catch our eye. So that drives design into some different way than what I personally think it should be. So we could say that designing something is like translating thoughts and philosophy into materials or into being. It's like shaping something, and shaping to giving a form to a material is like a part of the creation of the being itself. Something has to have a form to exist, actually. So when we are designing something, when anyone is designing something, we are like melting down our ideas together with the materials and giving them a form so that they can exist. So it's not only about a visual impact that won't last so long. It's more about the thoughts and the philosophy that is translated into some concrete thing that has a message to convey, that has a cause to change, that has a cause to serve the people and the world, actually. So some design issues may seem like giving us a better life, but in the meantime they may be destroying the world, actually, or destroying some other people's lives. That is also an issue we could have. So at this point, I remember that as we are having an international meeting here in Istanbul, in Turkey, Turkey design excellence, let's say, is not actually limited to only, let's say, the historical heritage we have and the birdhouses and the beautiful mosques and everything. These are also very precious and also visual memories for us, but also these experiences that we get from our history, our rich history, has something to tell us about how to approach the material and how to approach the environment and how to touch people's lives through design, through building, through designing anything that we encounter during our life here. It's not only about a superficial choice of forms or ornamentations or such. They have a deeper message about how to approach to all those beings around us, as well as how to approach all the human beings around us, and the animals, and the people that are not born yet, even. That the people that are going to take over this world after us. So Turkish design excellence, let's say, also has some strong experience and has some strong understanding in terms of this design, what I call that is, let's say, looking after all of our senses, looking after all the human beings around us and the environment and the world itself. So in order to catch up with this philosophy, we have to dig into the message, and it's not easy because it's very easy to stay in the superficial area of how beautiful they have built and how nicely done everything was. But the perception of the design philosophy behind those experiences, it needs time and it needs too much effort. At this point, I also should mention that for all these ideas, we have founded a new foundation here in Turkey. It's called Turkey Design Council. And Turkey Design Council is actually trying to focus on these points, on how we can use design as an instrument to achieve better life for all of us and a better world for all of us. Because the world itself is already created beautifully. Of course, we can make it more beautiful, I hope, but if we can maintain its beauty as it is, it's also enough for the human being. If not, we take it down. So, in order to achieve this, Turkish Design Council is focusing on all kinds of design that is related to textile design, to typography, calligraphy, and architecture and everything. And we are trying to search for what we have and how we can improve this. Because we believe that design is an instrument. Design is not the aim itself. Design is not the fetish for the human being, but it has to serve something. And if we can define what it's going to serve, then the design can do its job better for us, which is better for life of any human being, and which is better for the world itself and the other creatures on this world. So this is my notes. I hope I'm not out of time.
No. Thank you very much. As a moderator, of course, I cannot destroy now the session because when I listen to you, a lot of questions are arriving. Yeah, but I think we really should do it in the row. And I want to invite Tom now. Maybe
Hello.
Just one small association, because we were talking before about the terms, yeah, and the definitions of design, and because before design was something, 20 years ago, the people who work with heavy industry, they were designers. Yeah, they had the design process. Now design is going in a direction of, I would say, humanities. Yeah, designing is to do something with the society. And I'm curious about your annotations now, because you come from a technological approach, yeah? Game design, yeah? Please.
Thank you, and thanks for speaking in English.
Yeah.
That's really appreciated. Turkish audience here is great and very inspiring.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have very nice translators today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The translator
Perfect one,
friend
yeah.
asked me before, what are you going to talk about? Can I have the keywords so that I can translate it better to English? I appreciate it, but anyway, talking in English is actually not my first choice, but Karl asked me to that. But thank you for trying to understand it.
No, I
Because,
totally-
of course, my Turkish is richer
Better.
than my English.
Well, I appreciate it. I was ready to put these on and understand. So my name's Tom, and yeah, I think it's been really interesting hearing you guys talk about this, and my mind is alive with questions myself and conversations, and there's lots of similarities I think we're all going to share at the end of this. But I think on what you were talking about, I guess a lot of what our work is deconstruction of pre-existing ideas to allow people to reconstruct them for themselves. So I find a lot of the time when I introduce myself as an artist or as a designer or as a game designer or as a musician or something like this, I can see in people's eyes, you're like this, you know, you're this kind of person, you do that kind of thing, and people have their own interpretation of what design means and so forth. And so I think it may not seem like a big deal, but I think in some ways it's reflective of the architecture of our minds and the architecture of the societies that we live in and our cultures. Because what it means is that we build up these shapes and patterns and structures of thought and idea that we put associations onto. And then those ideas carry on unquestioned for a while. But I think what we really enjoy doing, because we are in love with the creative process, with what we do, is we want to, and we acknowledge the fact that questioning things is really important. Like you were saying earlier on, you know, why am I doing this? What is this for? What are the reasons for this? If you don't question what something is, then it's very difficult to make something new. So a lot of what we do seems to be that we are, in some ways, creating the environment to make it easy for other people to create their own ideas, make their own design on things. So a lot of what we end up doing is it comes into notions of identity, whether it's yourself or the culture you live in or this kind of society that you live in. And it comes into notions of, I think one of the things that's interesting for me, when you say we're working from a technological point of view, we don't really. The technology is very, very much down the line in what we do. We tend to, and it's different to what you do in a way as well, because we don't often have a problem to solve. I mean, coming up with an idea and doing it, you will find so many problems along the way anyway. Yeah, so we don't always start with the problem to solve, but we often start with questions, and we'll try and provide the environment to a healthy environment to ask questions, to share knowledge, and to open outside our own understanding, and to what you both alluded to about the importance of diversity and the importance of. There's a nice bit in the keynote this morning where someone was talking very strongly about the Istanbul identity being very inclusive and welcoming of cultures, and very, very proud of that. And I think that's something that we certainly try and promote in our practice, because we know that the pre-existing models for what a game is, or what a piece of music is, or what a piece of architecture or space is, needs to change. It has to change, and it is changing, because everybody that comes into a space changes it. Everybody that makes a piece of music using an old instrument or a new instrument is changing what music is. So it's all changing all the time, and I think what we try and do is give people the opportunity to take part in that creative process themselves. So there's something. Oh yeah. So, and just quickly on that, I think one of the key words that I've got in my head when it comes to talking about spaces essentially a lot of the time. It seems like every third person in Istanbul is an architect to me. Like I've met so many architects already, or people involved in architecture, and of course that is about space. And I think there's a pre-existing understanding of the importance of involving people in that process, because you are dealing with people and the spaces that they inhabit. So there's already a good base level of acceptance and acknowledgement that people are important in that. But I think, because I do work a lot in digital and virtual spaces, and I spend a lot of my time trying to the amazing thing about that is it's purely conceptual. Nothing exists until you start creating it. And that's really exciting from a kind of creative point of view, with no physical limitations. But of course, I want to bring those approaches into the real world so we can kind of play with stuff and be engaged with things. And I think as we start to, as certainly our work starts to kind of permeate physical spaces and become part of it rather than just like on it, and people start to kind of shift their behavior in it. Okay, so when you have a TV show, you watch it, you're looking at it, and then it's very clear that it's not connected to the world you're living in, right? You're looking at a screen, and then it's finished, and you're off, and you can disconnect. And we've learned that language, we've learned that behavioral model. As you start creating much more subtle connections between, virtual, digital things in the space and the environment with the physical, the disconnection transition period becomes much more difficult for people to know within themselves. And so you end up having a really powerful effect on people in the physical world. It's not the safe space of a screen or a bedroom or whatever. And I think the word care is really starting to come up in a lot of the work that we are involved in, because we are having to acknowledge the fact that this is very powerful stuff. You're automatically involved in psychology, in people's sense of self and space and their relationship with it. And we're starting to realize we need to be very, very conscious of caring for the people who are taking part in what we're doing, which is, I think, sounds like it's something that we all agree on anyway, but it's good to have it clarified when it comes to virtual stuff. So, yeah, I don't want to go on too long because there's a lot to talk about, and you still haven't spoken.
Yes, I did it.
Thank you very much. Please. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so my name is Kristoph. Thank you very much for inviting me and having me here. So I'm working at an architecture firm called UNStudio. We are based in Amsterdam. And UNStudio was founded in 1988. That's what Karl was already saying in his introduction. Yes? Now everybody can hear me, hopefully. The name UNStudio stands for United Network, and that already hints on the way Ben thought of the design process in his architecture firm. So it was an inclusive process. It was not about architect, coming up with a great idea. No, it was about creating architecture by collecting information and data, not only from the users, but also from anybody involved in the process of architecture. So he started creating relatively extensive teams around the conceptual design thinking process of the projects in the very beginning. And you can imagine that back in the days, in the 80s, that was not that easy because there was no internet. there was only phones and fax machines, and so it was, you know, the thought of actually connecting each other in order to create something better in the design process already originated in the very beginning of our company.
So he was before the technique.
Yes, yes. So there was an urge.
Yeah.
There was an urge of connectivity that even came up in the architecture world. And so, yeah, from that beginning, our company always wanted to make sure that whatever we design is informed by the users, by the location, by the environment, and all these items play a big role in how actually the buildings end up looking. And then the way they look is actually secondary, because it is an output that is generated by a lot of information. So, for example, there is one project, a transportation hub that I was personally working on, that is a traffic node for buses, bikers, and in Holland there are a lot of bikers. So there is a parking garage for bikes, for 20,000 bikes, for example, and it's a transportation node of 100 passengers a day. And everybody comes there and needs to switch to a different use of or means of transport, from trains to cars, from cars to bikes, buses, electrobuses, and actually motor buses. So the challenge of this huge infrastructure project was, how can we make sure that the user, the person, the human being who comes there doesn't need to literally orient him or herself in a space in order to find the destination, but it's just being guided by the building. So you arrive at point A, and in order to get to the point B that you want to get to, you don't have any intersections with users who are going to point C. So the whole concept was analyzing the walking paths and the movements of the people, and getting data about the amounts of people that are using specific modes of transportation and how they move, and what is the shortest and best way to connect them to the next means of transportation that they want to use. So this whole project resulted in tons of data that basically then generated in a geometry of pipes, so to speak, which then resulted in a movement without crossings. So then the outcome of the building is something that looks odd to the normal human being, let's say, or to the architecture that we are used to, because the architecture that we are used to is probably just straight and has a normal roof and probably 90 degrees. So this architecture was completely, they call it free form, but it's actually not free at all, because it is very informed. So in the end, it took very long time to build this structure, because of course it challenges not only us as the users or the architects who design it, but also the construction companies to actually realize it. So there were a lot of challenges on that side as well, but it got built after almost 15 years. And the people of Arnhem, which is the city where it is, they were living with a hole in the ground for 15 years, and now they have this huge transportation hub, and they love it. And I'm not saying it because I was working on it or that I was part of the design process, but they are impressed how buildings can actually exist without noticing them, although they look completely strange. But when you are using them, you don't even notice. So it is something, yeah, so the message here would be that it's worth really digging deep to understand what we are designing. So it is not only an object, not a building, not something that looks good. The look should be somehow secondary, but it is more the function and actually bringing a building to its real use. Yeah, and a train station in Holland, in a city in Holland, will be completely different than a train station anywhere else in any other city. So, yeah, I think analyzing data, analyzing users, analyzing how people move is very important to actually come up with a successful design for a building from our point of view. And yeah, there is proof that it works. So sometimes it's worth the effort. And yeah, coming back to the very beginnings, without internet, now the whole process is faster, it's easier. So there is access to much more data, there's access to more information, you get feedback much faster. So now it is actually already easier to design something based on data and information. And any other branch of design, like information design, like everybody who is coding uses it. So why don't we use it also for objects, architecture, anything else? It's there. We share a lot of information about ourselves, and yeah, we believe that it's smart to actually use this information in a good way to generate architecture with it that actually provides the people with something that they really need. Yeah, and then, yeah, in my opinion, since architecture is that big also sometimes, the looks are or should be a little bit secondary in the conceptual design process, while of course we as architects have to make sure that that everything looks beautiful, yeah, in a way, but that's very subjective. So there is a little bit of the danger that, you know, I think something that is beautiful, it's not beautiful to everybody, but something that works satisfies everybody. So maybe that's it.
Thank you. So thank you for the first round. I would now ask each of them one question, and then I would offer you to ask questions. And maybe we can start now from this direction. This sounds really very interesting, what you told us about your projects, about participation and collecting data and working with the data for a better life. We had, I think, 3 years ago, we worked together with the Nowak company, also from Netherlands. And you know, the Netherlands people, the companies, they really take care a lot, yeah, of participation and to work with people. And the Nowak people told us they don't work in projects where the ethical standard is not okay. Yeah? So they said, we don't work for the military. And I want to ask you now, you know, you are a big company with 200 people, yeah, from 27 countries. You work in 4 locations. And because I think your process, isn't it expensive? Who pays that? Who can afford to work with you? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I have to say that I don't agree, and there is nothing expensive around the process. We are using software that is available to anybody. Everybody can go and buy it. We are...
So you are effective and not expensive, yeah?
Yeah,
okay.
I would not say that we are expensive at all. We are actually using software that's probably not everybody's idea of being used for architecture, per se. In order to actually make our design process easier. Yeah. And this data or the software is available everywhere. Yeah,
so it's just a good construction and
it's
to use it in a right way.
It's a different process. It is something that we really believe in, and but it doesn't have any effect on that.
Thank you.
On the finances.
Okay. And Tom, because you said you're also artist and you work with these environments, experience, What do you think about the relation between being an artist and a designer? Because I know that, I would say maybe my generation of designers, especially the product designers in the last century, yeah, some of them were a little bit like stars, you know, like Philip Stark, yeah. You know this name, yeah, they earn a lot of money with working like that. And it's a little bit, you don't know really, is it an artist, is it a designer? And we always were, when I talk with my students, we tell the students, okay, an artist can work free, yeah, with nobody tells him what he should do. But if you are a designer, you get a briefing and then you work with that. So maybe our guest tomorrow, Stefan Sackmeister, he's now more artist, yeah? Because if companies ask him to work for him, they buy him, you know, as a brand, yeah? He will not do what they tell him, yeah? They buy him, and it's a good situation, yeah? I like for him. But how do you deal with this situation in the work, supporting to develop the life of people in a better way, as an artist or as a designer?
I have a very, very broad definition of both.
Yeah, yeah.
So it doesn't bother me to interchange. It really often depends on who I'm speaking to, or where the funding is sometimes. Yeah. When you ask me how I'm applying either or both to my practice to help other people, I'd say I don't think that comes down to being an artist or a designer. I think it's just about deciding what it is you want to do. Mm-hmm. A certain kind of maybe sensitivity. You used the word empathy earlier on. I guess I'd agree that there's a need for something like that, but that could be an empathic. I mean, again, my definitions are very broad, but that could be an empathic relationship between you and some pigment, some paint.
So for you, it's not really a problem.
Yeah, because there's maybe you are creating a sound that resonates in a space it's kind of having I used the word reciprocal earlier. I don't know if you know this word. It's like you do good for each other kind of thing. It's a resonant kind of thing. So I'm trying to think. I think I don't know if I help people, and I don't know if my work helps people, but I know that in my experience of work, that there have been situations that I've really not liked, that have made me feel intensely uncomfortable or disappointed in the world or in the environment I'm in, or the people I'm working with, and a kind of sadness that we seem to be forced into these particular behaviors because of the structures that we find ourselves in. And so I do have a kind of desire to change, to have an effect on that. And I think in that respect, I listen to everyone talking, I think there's a certain rebelliousness to any creative act, to be honest. Yeah. And I think if that rebellious is based on wanting to make positive change for yourself or someone else, then it doesn't matter if you're a designer or an artist or a truck driver or whatever. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. And with Etche, I think some of you maybe know Viktor Papanek. No? It's an Austrian, yeah. I'm proud of him. In 1973, he wrote a book. It was called Design for the Real World, yeah. And what he meant is, he said in his foreword that designers produce more and more useless, potentially damaging, irresponsible, and ecologically products, yeah, alarming products, as items of mass consumption. Yeah? Papanek spoke decidedly against the irresponsibility of design, and he himself developed a radio out from an old tin can. Yeah? It looked really weird, but it was a very cheap radio. People in Africa could use, yeah, and it cost nothing, but it was really with a good result. But what did the famous designers? They said, this guy is not a good designer, it's a bad designer, it doesn't look beautiful, yeah? It's not Bauhaus and blah, blah, yeah? And they really ridiculed him, yeah? They say, no, this is nothing. And in the last years, I think there's really a movement, yeah? Designers are in contact with grassroots initiatives in cities like in Detroit, which is really a devastated city. Designers play a very important role, yeah, to develop the life again. And I wanted to ask you now, because in your talk, I really mentioned that you do really interesting, I think some of the ideas, yeah, Papanek is also in your work, yeah? But how do you deal in your daily work practice? Who pays you, yeah, for developing? Because I saw also in your biography that you made the interior design for really famous people like Spielberg and guys in the US, yeah? And how is it for you, yeah, to deal with this topic?
Well, that one.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, can you
Yeah.
hear? Okay. Well, the ones that you're talking about, the interior, it was the office that I was working for.
Yeah, okay,
Of course,
yeah.
maybe I was
And
not
how
a
it was?
senior back
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
Okay. But now, it's actually such a good question because remembering Victor Papanek,
Yeah.
actually he was a good foreseer, right?
Yeah.
Can you use
Yeah,
that
yeah,
word?
foreseer.
Because what he's saying is what's happening today. And we have cellular phones. It's telling us when we have to get a new one. Because in 2 years it's gone. I just want to keep the same mobile phone, but I can't because somehow it gets broken. So somehow this mass production thing became really like dominating your life and telling you what to do. You have to get a new one. And it's all these surplus products that I was talking about.
Yeah.
And considering our work, we have a different way of dealing with this. Who is our client? Mostly you expect the client come to you and tell you the brief, which is the normal way because that way you get paid.
Yeah.
You say, well, I'm gonna do it for this amount, and you just continue. But you know, with the visionary work, I can tell you the ideas we come up with. The best ideas were the times we had economic crisis, like no telephone would ring.
Okay.
So we just still go to the office at 9 sharp, and just open open the topic, like what we can do, what's the problematic areas, what's missing, because the starting point is human. Mm-hmm. And all you need is just to concentrate, wherever your playground. In our case, it was maybe an office area or whatever. So we were just really concentrating on what should we do. And the funny thing is, sometimes we do design these things not for a specific company, just for the purpose of doing something good. And I call it inner motivation, because when you have all these economic crises, which all of us going through also, design is the luxury thing, you know, probably the last on the list to do. So they just, you know, cross us the first if you don't want to make any investment. So what do? We just concentrate on our work and try to come up with a good idea. But that idea always goes to the right place. So we go to the firms that we think that they are able to carry that product, a good product, good for health. Maybe it requires some risks because it's not the cliche. You actually ruin the cliches to come up with a visionary work, and you just have to find a good partner who's gonna. You have to convince them that they're gonna get really trust on you.
Yeah.
And in that case, you start doing things with them, maybe good for people, but maybe they're not going to be sold for 2 years. And it happened to us. One of the companies we're working for, the leading office furniture companies, I remember the client was saying, that's too early. You know, nobody understood our product. And we presented our first, one of the visionary products. It was 2016. Only European architects were dealing, paying attention. Yeah. And when we told them the story, they wanted me to tell them, why did we come up with this idea? How did we come up a designer from Turkey? We just said, we just concentrate on human. So if we come to Victor Papanek's idea of like designing for everyone, I think what we should do just concentrate on who needs what. If it's a poor area, if it's an area that needs certain products that has to be very economic, that's your problem. You just go for it. But you know, the intention will be exactly the same, like we're designing for a very capable company. Yeah. It's the same thing. So the routine it never changes. Okay. If it's just a little accessory for a glass company, we start from the beginning the same idea. Why am I doing it again? Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if it's the answer.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and my question to you is, in the morning, the mayor told us about the 8,500 years of history of Istanbul, yeah? And I'm a lucky guy. I can travel a lot. I saw many countries, many cities. But you know, if you're maybe in Berlin, yeah, Berlin is also a big city, yeah. But yeah, it's Germany, yeah. If you're in New York City, yeah, in Manhattan, it's Manhattan, yeah. Maybe London is maybe different. But Istanbul is, for me, totally fascinating because there are, I think, 20 million people about, and it's such a mix of culture and of continents. And if you look around, it's the city. I think I was. If you come the next time, you never know what's new, yeah, because it's very quick, yeah, it's very quick, and you mentioned the visual culture and visual communication. So, you know, sometimes it's hard to be a designer in a small city like I am from Graz, yeah, with 300,000 inhabitants, yeah. For this city, maybe it's easy to have something like yeah, you can say this is the brand of the city, maybe. But with Istanbul, how do you deal with that in this, living in this city and working with visual communication? Yeah, I think it's a hard job.
That's true. Istanbul is a very historical city, as you mentioned. But comparing to some other historical cities of the world, for example, from Europe, from other continents, Istanbul is maybe a little bit different from them because we often complain that the historical heritage is not properly preserved here. Yeah. We have a lot of things that spoil the picturesque heritage we have. We have a lot of new buildings. We have a lot of, let's say, Celtic city images here in Istanbul. But this is also something that is unique to Istanbul. It is not a beauty that has been preserved and that will be preserved as a material of a let's say, museologic beauty, but instead it's a city that is fully alive, that is living, that is changing all the time. So there is not we don't have a constant Istanbul image that is very beautiful and we can peacefully watch and enjoy the beauty of that. But instead we have a city that is alive and that is like a living creature, changing, that has some flaws, that has some incapabilities, but all together with all the layers it has throughout its history, with the palimpsest layers, because as you mentioned, it has a rich diversity of cultures that have been over each other and that have overlapped here. And finally, we have the Ottoman era and the modern Turkish Istanbul we have now. But this modern Turkish Istanbul has all these layers containing in itself still, and this is a part of its identity as well. Yeah. Turkish modern contemporary Istanbul does not have a single identity which can be considered as a poor identity, but instead it contains all of its history and all the layers on top of each other, and finally the let's say Muslim, Ottoman, Turkish Istanbul identity, which is here for more than 5 centuries now. But it still contains everything. As you can see, the Venetian tower just behind you, it's part of the city's identity. It's very strong image for the city, and it's from Venetian time. So we still carry it. Istanbul identity owns everything that it has transferred from the history. So I think being a city of different layers and different cultures, and finally being a city that is still alive, unlike a frozen beauty, I think it's the main identity of Istanbul. Okay.
So it's diversity,
Excuse me?
Yeah, it's diversity.
That's true.
Okay.
That's true.
Cool. Yeah, thank you very much for the answers. I would like to invite you now, giving us questions. We have microphones here, I can't see. Here, please.
I would like to ask a question to
Please.
Mr. Celaleddin, Çelik. And then I will ask you, Tom and Kristoph, afterwards, if I can, of course.
Sure.
So first of all, I want to ask, why do designers and architects have these moral concerns on city or what they building and designing? Should these moral concerns or this design ethics or the work ethics encapsulate these moral concerns, or is it just our way of, educating or looking to life and city? Why do you think we have these concerns, and what we should do about them? This is my first question. And should I keep continue or
Maybe we should
have an answer, right?
Start with the first question. Who wants to answer?
Is it a specific question?
Yes, it's a specific question.
Okay.
I can answer. I think that what you mentioned, the moral concerns, it is not something fragmented for me. I mean, I think we at least should not have different moral concerns, different ethics for business, for design, for family, or for the other aspects, for the other platforms of our lives. I think moral concern is something united, something that cannot be divided into different fragments. So this united moral concern of course, applies to anything you deal with. Anything you deal with through your education, through your professional life, or your personal relations, or your family life. I think if you are a designer that has a united moral concern, then of course you'll approach design with the same moral ethics and concerns you have in the other parts of your life.
Thanks. Okay.
Please.
I want to continue with you, Mr. Kristoph. And I want to ask, you said I'm using data, we are using data to design our buildings. But data are, don't you think they are variable? I mean, we change data through what we do. And that when we do something, when we make a decision, it flows to another direction. So don't you think they are a little bit mandatory on your design? Shouldn't we make more vision about how people should live, how people should act? Or we just keep ourselves in behind and read the data and make a design for keeping the life continuous as it is? And another question, I'm very familiar with your work, and I want to ask you, if UNStudio would build an entire city or an entire neighborhood, would that make us happy as citizens? Or the UNStudio buildings are just, glamorous objects in a moderate context? I want to ask you this.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your questions. Very challenging questions. Well, first of all, the data question. I mean, I understand your point of view on that, and I think every design task has to deal with a different usage of this data. So the example that I told you was basically, okay, they're using like chip cards for traveling public transport in the Netherlands. So basically this data informs us about how many users do A, B, C, D. Yeah, and how many of A go to B, and so this data is necessary for a transportation hub to work. Yeah, so that was the data that was used for that specific project. But for example, other data that we can use is just the natural environment. So if we analyze sun and how it falls on the neighboring buildings and what it generates for the building that we are supposed to put somewhere, that gives us also a lot of information that helps to actually improve the functionality of this building. So data is not really always the same type of data. It's just that I think we should think about what we and how we are behaving today, and this is not where we stop. Of course, we have to foresee the future trends as well. So a part of our office is actually also UNStudio Futures, where we are really thinking forward and trying to understand what or how people's behaviors and needs, how do they change, how will they look like maybe in 10, 20, 30 years from now. So we are trying to understand it, we are trying to think about it also, and it comes back into some of our current design work as well. Yeah, so I think my response to this question is, I think data is not just a generic term. It actually has a lot of content in it. There's many different information that you can call data. So I think we have to be careful also just saying data is just the data that Facebook is collecting about us, because it's not only that. Yeah, and then the other question about the city. Well, I actually personally don't want to be responsible for designing a whole city. I think if we are talking about designing a master plan, maybe, I think, again, if you approach it from a perspective of information and really collecting collecting as much information as you can in order to actually develop an idea about a city and how a city can function. I think that's also an approach that I would believe in, but I don't think you can generalize something and saying that everybody would be happy if they would live in something that one person or a small group of people would design. I think that's impossible. That's impossible. So yeah, I think we can definitely develop ideas with, let's say, UNStudio's approach in the back of our minds that might maybe engage people's way of thinking, but yeah, I don't think we can make anybody happy by designing something like a city. I think that's too complex.
Thank you. My last question, sorry. What's your, you are designing in a virtual world, and what's your pinpoint actually? What's your pinpoints and what's your restrictions? What's your path to design a game? And that's my last question. Thank you for taking it.
Thank you for the questions.
Yes, good question. Did you say what my pain points? I don't know what that is really. Did you say pinpoints? Pinpoints? As in the key things that are important in the process? I'd say definitely human behavior and studying that and being a human being myself and thinking about the kind of experiences that I think I'd like or I'd want to create, but also seeing how other people respond in a kind of interactive environment. I think the thing that's most important to me is that whatever we make, it allows other people to experience something they might not be able to experience normally. Not in terms of it being an alien experience, but in terms of allowing them to look at their life through a different lens, if you like, through a slightly different perspective. What was the rest of the question? What was your restrictions? The restrictions, yeah. Okay, so honestly, I feel like we don't really have very many. I think we're really, really lucky because I guess money is probably the biggest restriction, to be honest. And actually something that other people have touched on as well is gaining people's trust. Gaining people's trust to do something that hasn't been done before. And kind of having to, you can get very excited with an idea, and in your mind you've got to the end point already, but by that point you've already developed the language and understanding and done the research, and to you it's already kind of real, and you have to remember that to other people they're still at the beginning of that journey. And so in order for you to gain their trust and to kind of encourage them to go on that journey with you or support you on it, you kind of have to come back to that point where they are and then and go with them. So a lot of the challenges that we have are, I guess, convincing people that in the UK at the moment there's a lot of emphasis on innovation, okay, and what that means is almost a little bit like using it as a word to throw at things, and a bit like the way design has been used previously. Design, it's the new word, it's where all the money is, it's what cool people are doing, it's really interesting. And all of a sudden the word design gets associated with real crap. And so it's the same with innovation in the UK right now. But there's a real deep need for innovation. However, the structures that provide the funding for innovation or design have a different understanding of what it means. So I think, again, it comes back to language for me in some respects. That's the biggest pain point, the communication. Yeah. Yeah? All right.
Please.
While we're waiting for someone to come up with another really challenging question.
Okay, thank you very
we
much.
got one. All right, sorry.
Thank you very much. Cüneyt Sayın from Futurafon. I want to thank all panelists and Mr. Stoker for this session. My question is from the other side of the table. As a DEM player, how we can motivate better our design team and our designers for better design and better life? It's a general question.
Is that for designers?
Or designers, or design team.
How
we can motivate our design team and our designers for better design and better...
Can I start? Yeah. I think most important is to educate, to give students, or also in the schools, good education. Yeah? And what I know from my home country, Austria, in the last years, there's they only believe, they only tell you digitalization. Yeah? They don't want young people to be creative anymore. They cut down the teaching of illustration in the schools. Yeah? They only want them to learn mathematics, computing, and natural science. Yeah? They don't teach art anymore. Yeah? And it's really a pity, because I think this is the basic, the basic for the new society. The funny thing is, when the students come to me in our institute, we have about 60 students per year new in the bachelor degree information design. You really can see how important the high school education is. You really see if they have parents working with them in the right direction, and if they have good teachers. Yeah? If the teachers in the high school are fantastic, the students are fantastic. Yeah? And I believe that many young people, and I think it's the same here, they are completely different from their ideology and what they want from life than my generation, because we are the last generation of the, I would say, of the modern. Yeah? We thought we can bring the world and the nature under our control. Yeah, we can destroy everything, and we just do it for the money. And now you can see not what we did, but what some did. Yeah, and I think that everybody knows that we should stop and go in another direction. But I really think that the young people leave it. Like my students say to me, I don't need a car, I own a car, yeah? I share a car. Yeah? I don't want to have a house. Yeah? I can go on rent, and then maybe I go to Istanbul. Yeah? They have a totally, I think really a totally other approach to the world. And this, I think it's optimistic. And my job is, and the job of design education is, to work with that. Yeah? But I don't know how to deal with the designers in my age. I think we will retiring, yeah. So it's not a problem, yeah. But maybe I give it to you now. What do you think?
Are you talking about students, or are you talking about designers in general? Designers. I think environment's very important for designers. An environment, not just the space, but the kind of psychological environment, is very important for anybody that wants to make anything and to feel like there's a conversation, a dialogue. It's not just not just being told what to do or how to do it. There needs to be space for experimentation and to try things and to feel supported in failing, in trying things and it not working. And I think the most difficult thing that I think we face is what is the value associated with what we do. And because, like you say, we live in times where particular things are worth very clear, they have very clear value. This is whatever, it costs, in my country, £1 or something like this. Materials and things like this have very clear value on a kind of cultural level, societal level, but things like experiences are kind of, they're quite difficult to put a price on. So we need a different value system in some ways. And sometimes that value system can just be being listened to and having a conversation and being recognized. I think recognition is a really important part of being a human being. And it's like when you say what would help a designer, it's just what would help anyone, what would help any human being. Like, there's nothing different between a designer and anybody else, really, I guess. I think maybe some people are more sensitive to a space. So, yeah. The same as what would make you happy, probably. Some space, feel like you're listened to, someone to talk with, the tools that you need. That's my answer.
Thank you for everything that you said so far. When you said that the word innovation is being thrown around in the UK, I think it's being thrown around everywhere. But another word that this statement rang a bell, that also the word AI or artificial intelligence is also being overused and misused nowadays. And I think when it comes to design, it's a more philosophical thought, but I'm wondering in a sense of like product design or game design, if you as designers have any concern about how maybe the automation of something like the creative process, if you are excited about certain things or worried about certain things when it comes to the creative process being eventually done by robots or machines, especially for game design, because now it's mostly done by people. Like, you come up with the idea of a game or whatever, right? And then you start the design process, but then what if eventually, which I don't think it's that far from now, the whole process is going to be done by robots or machines. Are you concerned about this in a way, or like, are there any moral questions that are being raised in that realm of design where you work, or it's just people now are not really thinking about this and focusing more on how to make maybe more interactive games or like education, like whatever? Yeah, that's my question.
Okay, so AI and robotics and like these words, same as data actually. I think they mean lots of different things to lots of different people, and there's lots of different permutations for how to use them and what they might be used for. I think I'm personally really excited about AI because for me it's I can see that there are some clear it depends what kind of AI you're talking about. Like, for example, I'm fascinated by neural nets and the way that we can train computers to see things and to understand things, but more from a kind of psychological point of view. Like, to me, it's just like a way to understand ourselves better. But I'm also, and this comes to diversity again, I think the thing that worries me most about any of these technologies is who's creating them and what they're being used for, I suppose. And if it's only a very small group of people building these technologies, then you're going to get a very small range of opportunities to use them. And so there's really famous kind of biases that are inherent in a lot of these kind of systems, which are built by white men and kind of ignore people of color, women, all these kind of things. But I think, and I hope that as time goes on, that will be addressed. I don't think that creativity will ever be taken over by anything. I think that all of these technologies that you're talking about are just new materials to play with. They're just new things to see how they can inform my practice and everybody else's practice. They're just new tools, really. They're tools for making more tools and so on. So as a father of 3 children, I'm keenly aware of the dangers of ignoring the evolution and development of these technologies. And it is faster than I am, you know, and all of us, and we all do need to be kind of like questioning ourselves all the time, you know, like you said, like what's this data for? Why am I using it? What are the ethical, moral kind of associations with it? But as long as we keep questioning, and that's why it's really important to always ask questions, as long as we keep doing that and the conversation keeps on going, then I think we're going to be okay. That's my opinion. What about you guys?
Yeah,
Well, I'm not going to add too much, actually. I totally agree with you. I have no negative thoughts about artificial intelligence. It's good, it's fast. With automation, you can do a lot that you cannot do with human. I think the key word is empathy. You cannot expect from a machine to have an empathy. So, as again, like the designer or the creator, creative people, not the creator, creative people, between innovation, technology, AI, and user, you're standing in a point that you decide about the pattern. You decide about the result. You don't have to design a product all the time as a designer. Maybe it's going to be a way of living, a system, a kind of network. You know, designers are going into a way that they don't have to design a product like a tangible thing, all of them. It's creating ideas. We don't know how the life is going to be in 50 years. But you can guess because all the hints are here today. So you have to be a good reader. And you can always be there using what you have as a technology, robots. I love them. I have no problem with that.
But maybe one argument as a historian, yeah? If you look back, in the 70s we had a big discussion about does technology, yeah? It's only a question who uses this, yeah? So people told us that technology, it's from the ethics side, yeah? You cannot say it's bad or it's good, because it's a question how the people use it. But I think that machinery sometimes decide realities, yeah? Like you produce in a factory, you produce maybe bombs, yeah? And you have to throw them down, yeah? Because they are produced and you have to do something with that. And sometimes technological progress, yeah, brings, I think, facts with them, which you maybe can't control like you thought maybe you could control it. And I think we should take care about that. That's really important, yeah. And it's also a question who uses this, yeah. If you remember the first war, the first digital war in Iraq war, you couldn't see people bleeding, yeah. It was just now like a computer game, yeah. You shot them down and there was no blood, yeah. Not like in First World War when you kill the people like that. So it's easy to kill them. And I have some thoughts like that with the new technology, and I think we should take care.
I agree, yeah, that we need to take care.
Yeah.
We have to have a constant conversation,
yeah,
and try not to disassociate ourselves from reality, yeah, through technology.
Yeah. Are there any questions left? Yeah, please.
First of all, thank you all for sharing your precious experiences and opinions with us. My question is not specially directed towards anyone, so I will appreciate any answer. However, the inspiration of the question comes from Kristoph Nowak's speech, I would say. In the past, we had been dreaming about flying cars about now. But we see that when the dream arrived, maybe it felt a bit too much for everyone. And now there are more and more people now even not using the normal cars, but bikes more. So I believe when we say better design for better life, the first question that comes to mind is better for who? And the audience is usually human beings. So the common denominator is always human-centric design, because that's who that experiences the design.
But I see, I mean, in my opinion, technology is pushing forward for an exponential development. However, human beings started to resist somehow and have the tendency to go back to past and to what was really natural and what was basic in the beginning. So do you think better design is always something new, or is new always better? Or do you think better design should follow technology's flow, or should it go with human beings' tendency to go past?
Who wants?
I think it's a great question, and I'm so glad that all these young people are coming up with these great, challenging questions. It doesn't have to be new. Sometimes you can find your inspiration or your problem solving in a maybe very old way. I think as far as we're going to be, you have to be open with the new generations, new habits. We also have to learn a lot about our past. What I like about multicultural experiences, I don't know if it's going to be too related with that, but I just want to add it. You learn a lot about yourself, what's good about your culture, your values, and also you learn about looking at problems with new eyes, with everybody's eyes. So if you think like that, I think with the pushing technology, you don't have to come up with a new all the time, but right answer to a right problem sometimes is enough. If the people are ready for it, yes, it's going to be used. Otherwise, sometimes it takes time. You have to wait for people to understand why they really need that certain product. These visionary products, sometimes they're a little painful. I think that's what you were talking about, right? We are expecting certain new products, but people are resisting to it because there are some other dynamics in economy. But we shouldn't give up. But we can find the answer in the past. I believe that. So we shouldn't be really away from our past, but we should be really, really taking care of all these, dynamics happening around us.
My boss, Götze, tells me that we should stop now. Please, one last remark.
Addition. Actually, I'm also questioning this, but I have an addition. Maybe it's kind of a rejection also, because instead of a modern technologic innovative car or any other invention, let's say, using a bike, maybe it's not directly correlated with going back. I personally think that it's not quite correct to directly correlate anything innovated with the future, but anything that's out of this line with the past. Because we cannot go back. That's out of question. We don't have any opportunity to go back in any time of this world. We will always go to the future. We are now walking into the future at this very moment. So I think this correlation should be questioned. Is the future only innovation and progress? Maybe it's a mythos. Maybe it's not going back to do something else. That's my
Thank you.
Stop now. Maybe what I would mention is, I thought maybe you are thinking on how we deal with animals. Because, this is also with the environment. What we do with the animals, it's really crazy. Yeah? And animals and design is a topic which could be really interesting. Yeah? But we have to stop now. I want to close up. Yeah? Would say thank you, but I have one little citat. Yeah? Because at the moment I do a lot of research, and the funny thing is, everything is written, yeah? But it is written in books like that, which you cannot read because they are too thick and they are not well designed, yeah? So it's impossible to read it, and my job is to read and to transform it maybe to the public. This is also a job of a designer, and I stop now. with a citat from Stuart Walker, who is also from Great Britain. He's a professor in Lancaster, and he wrote, I think, 3 or 4 books in the last 4 years about sustainable and social design. And what he says, he said, we should begin to adapt and change our expectations and see such change in the world as a positive development that holds the potential for us to reconnect with things that really matter, with first the practical needs for living, which are dependent on but should be sympathetic to the natural environment. Second, the social needs, relationships, and fostering a sense of community, which are all vital to notions of human well-being. And the third, personal needs, encompassing spiritual and ethical concerns, which are less about having and more about being, less concerned with external things and more concerned with the inner search for meaning that is characteristic of the human condition. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, but you should wait a little bit time, please.
Yeah.
Okay. Değerli misafirler, oturum başkanımız ve konuşmacılarımıza paylaştıkları bilgiler için teşekkür ediyor. Plaketlerini takdim etmemiz için sahnede kalmalarını rica ediyoruz kendilerinden. Değerli konuşmacılarımıza plaketlerini takdim etmek üzere İstanbul Büyükşehir Belediyesi Kurumsal Proje Yönetim Müdürü Sayın Doktor Hikmet Erkan'ı sahneye davet ediyorum. Sayın Profesör Karl plaketini takdim ediyoruz. Şu an Sayın Celaleddin Çelik'e plaketlerini takdim ediyoruz. Bu arada fotoğraf çekimimiz de var. Bu yüzden birkaç saniye beklemenizi önemli rica ediyoruz. Plaket takdim edilirken birkaç saniye görüntü alalım efendim. Sizden ricamız. Demajo'ya plaketini takdim ediyoruz ve bir fotoğraf çekimimiz var. Ardından Sayın kıdemli mimar Kristoph Nowak'a plaketini takdim ediyoruz. Thank you. Thank you very much.